Today in class we used MADS to compare samples. We were looking at a fundraising activity with a hiking club and thinking about which team deserved to win the prize. For homework, you're going to look at page 10 and then please correct it with this caption. For homework, we're going to go ahead and complete this table. So we need to identify the mean and the MAD for each team. And I know it says they're included in the table already, but we meant for them to be added after you did that in class today. So for example, for team 1, the mean should have been $35. The MAD was $6. For team 2, the mean should have been 35 also, and the MAD was 10. And so you'll notice on here that these line plots have already been plotted for you, so that kind of can help. I know you can't see the exact number of values, but if you wanted to look them up, you could look at the page previous to this on page 8, which would show you the exact number of values, because these match exactly with the teams that you're talking about today. So if you look at team 1, what we're going to do is we're going to mark with lines the distance of 1 MAD and 2 MADs from the mean. And we are going to first mark in the mean as well with a triangle. And so it kind of looks like a little bit of a balance, right? Like in science, when you think about a little scale, right? This is representing our balance point. And so for teams 1 and 2, the mean was both 35. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a little triangle here right at 35. So you can kind of see that's like the balance point for the data. So again, if you kind of imagine them being placed, this is kind of where that balance would occur at the mean. Now we're going to mark in the MADs. So in this first case, the MAD is 6. And so if I go 6 above the mean, right, the mean was 35. 6 above the mean would be 35 plus 6. That would be 41. So I'm going to mark a line here showing 1 MAD above. I'm also going to mark 1 MAD below. So 35 minus 6 would give me 29. And I actually have a data value that goes to 29. So it's going to go right through that data value. And so again, this marks at 41 and 29. This gives me the number of data values right here that are between 1 MAD or within 1 MAD of the mean. I'm also going to mark the location of 2 MADs of the mean because I'm going to need to find the percentages with those. So if I go from 41 to another MAD out, 41 plus 6 is going to get me to 47. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that in. And then if I go another MAD below, 29 minus 6 would give me 23. And again, this is approximate. I know it's hard to be exact, but this gives you, again, the values of 1 MAD from the mean and 2 MADs from the mean. And then you can also see what would be greater than 2 MADs. So now we're going to think about what percent of my data is within 1 MAD. So we're looking at this region right here. So these little data points right here, those 3. So 3 out of how many total members of the team? Well, there were a total of 6, so 3 out of 6. And we can probably recognize that that is 50% of the data. What about the percent of data that's within 2 MADs of the mean? So 2 MADs, I'm now looking at everything that's between 23 and 47. And here I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 out of my 6 values. So 6 out of 6, that would be 100% of my values. And how much of the data is within more than 2 MADs? It might be better actually to think about this one as being greater than 2 MADs, not within 2 MADs. So things that are out here in this area, right, they're more than 2 MADs from the mean. And in this case, that would be 0% of my data. All of it is contained within 2 MADs from the mean. Now let's take a look at number 2. If you haven't tried that, make sure you give it a shot yourself. So now our MAD is 10. So make sure that we are going from 35 up to 45 for our first line, and then from 35 down to 25, which is actually going to go through all those values right there. So this is 45, this is 25, and if I go an additional MAD, I'm going to go from 45 to 55, and from 25 down to 15. And so now again, I'm looking at how many are within 1 MAD. So that would hit all of these guys right here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 out of 6. You might recognize that that's the same as 2/3, which is the same as 67% or 66.666%. And then we have within 2 MADs. So within 2 MADs, I can see I have right from 15 to 55, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are all within the 15 to 55 part. So 6 out of the 6, or 100%, are within 2 mads from the mean. And now looking at what is greater than, well, I don't have any values there, so again, that's going to be 0%. All right, let's go ahead and fill in the means and the mads for teams 3 through 6. So for team 3, we should have had a mean of 35. For team 3, we should have had a mad of 25. For team 4, we should have had a mean of 35 and a mad of 26. And for team 5, we should have had a mean of 42. So make sure you noticed again that team 5 only had 5 people. So it was $210 divided by 5, which gave us an average of 42. The mad was 12. And then lastly, number 6, the mean was 35 and the mad was 5. So now let's take a moment again to mark in the means with the triangles. So I'm going to mark 35 right here with this triangle. I'm going to mark 35 here with a triangle. I'm going to mark 42 this time with a triangle. And I'm going to mark 35. All right, so, and this one maybe should be just a little bit over because that value is actually 42, the one that's right below there. All right, so now let's deal with the mads. So if we put in the mad values, so I'm at 35, but if I go up 25, well, 35 plus 25 would give me 60. So I have a line right here. And then 35 minus 25 would give me 10. So I'm looking right there, so that's going to go through that data set here. And at that point, you might be noticing that if I kept going out, it's going to actually go off of my number line if I keep going this direction here. So let's just go another mad above. So if I was at 60 and I add 25, I'm now at 85. I'll just write those numbers up here too. And so now let's think about what's happening here. So again, if I went 2 mads below, I would be going into the negative here, right? Because I need to go 25 more. So you could kind of sketch it in here. It would be at negative 15. But just so you're aware, that number does exist. It's just not showing up here. So let's think about how many of our numbers are within 1 mad. So within 1 mad, so from 10 to 60, that's 1, 2, 3, and there's a value that's covered here, 4, 5. So that's 5 out of my 6 values, which is approximately 83.33%, or 83%. And now let's look at 2 mads. So 2 mads, again, we're going from now negative 15 to 85. And you might be noticing that doesn't actually add any more values. So it's still 83%. And then what do you notice? Out here, we have one last number left. That's more than 2 mads. So that's one of the 6 numbers. And that would be 17%. So that number is kind of way out there by itself. Later on, you're going to hear about a term called an outlier. And so that person that raised $100, they're kind of in a whole league of their own. All right, now number 4, we're going to go ahead and mark in these mads. So the mean was 35. So 35 plus 26 would get us to 61. So we're going to go ahead and mark that in. So 61 is right around here. All right, then we're going to go ahead and go below. So 35 minus 26 is going to get us to 9. And again, you're going to notice that this would kind of go off of what's there. If we went down another 26, we're going to be into the negative, but you can kind of imagine that this value would still be included within it. And if we went up another 26, so 61 plus 26 would get us to 87. Right, that again is, we're going to have all the data values that are kind of caught between there. And again, in case you want to write it, 9 minus 26 would be negative 17. Okay, so now how many of our values are within 1 mad? So here, 1, 2, 3. So that would be 3 out of 6 values, which would be 50% of our data. What about within 2 mads? I can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those values are within 2 mads. So that's 6 out of 6, or 100%. And I don't have any values that are higher than that. So 0% are with it or greater than 2 mads. Last two, again, this number 5, we have our average at 42, and now our mad has become 12. And so 42 plus 12 would get us to 54. So we're going to go ahead and mark that in. So here's my 54. If I was at 42 and I subtracted 12, that would get me to 30. So this is 30. This is 54. If I went up another mad, so 54 plus 12, I would be at 66. And if I went down another mad, 30 minus 12, that would get me to 18. So now I can count my values here. So the number that are within 1 mad, I have 1, 2, 3. So 3 out of, and now I have to be careful. How many team members were there on team 5? There were 5. So 3 out of 5, that would be 60%. Again, if you forgot how to find those percentages, you can do it lots of different ways. You could do 3 divided by 5 on your calculator. You could think of a proportion and scale it up to something out of 100. So 5 times 20 is 100. 3 times 20 is 60. Lots of different ways to think about percentages. We're going to find those more tomorrow. The number of values that are within 2 mads, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 5 out of 5 or 100%. And I have no values that are greater than that in terms of greater than 2 mads. All right, last one, we are going to deal with number 6. The mean is 35 and the mad is 5. So if I go up 5, I would be here at 40. If I went down 5, I'd be here at 30. If I went up 5 more, I would be at 45. If I went down 5 more, I would be at 35. So the number that are within 1 mad, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 out of 6, which is around 67%. And then if you notice, I don't add any additional values when I extend out another mad. I still just have these original 4, so still 4 out of 6 or 67%. And then I have 2 additional values here that are beyond that. And there's a bell. So 2 out of 6 is 1/3. So I have 33% of my values that are more than 2 mads from my mean. All right, we're going to keep talking about these tomorrow, so I hope you'll come ready to talk more about dot plots, line plots, finding means, mads, and all those other fun statistics.